I am the weekend evening anchor at NBC5, and I'm so excited to be here with both of you because y'all own multi-million-dollar companies. So listen, let's have a little bit of advice for any of us that are looking to start a business or already have a business, and we're going to dig deep into their history a little bit. We want to make this fun and interactive for each and every one of you. So if you do have any questions, is that funny?
No, they don't want to see me fall.
Oh.
I'm just being
Because you see how many people have cameras out,
right.
right? That'll be on YouTube right now. And NBC5, and it's nice. But listen, if you have any questions, make sure you keep them in mind because towards the end of this, I'm going to call on a few people and you guys can ask these multi-million-dollar CEOs a thing or two. Maybe even for a loan. Who knows? Okay, so we know that owning a business, starting a business, it takes a lot of work. How many of you own a business or are considering owning a business? Okay, so that's pretty much everybody. That's exciting. Well, here's the thing. These two founders, we're going to dig deep into their history. They were startups at one point, and now they are multi-million-dollar corporations, and we're going to talk about their specific strategies. Is that okay?
Yep.
Let's give it up for them one more time. And we also have to give it up for King's hair, because curl makes, my daughter has curly hair, and I try to put it up in a ponytail every time, and she's like, no, we're not doing this, you need to do my hair.
I put the curl mix in today, too.
You did? We are going to have a lot of fun with this today. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Kim. Let's think back. You started in
2015, pivoted in 2018.
Okay. Well, let's go back 10 years ago. Tell us where you were, what was going through your mind, and what motivated you to start Chronix.
10 years ago, I was actually not doing Chronix. I had just graduated from college, and I wanted to be a tech founder. So I had launched an app, a new social network for natural hair, and I was convinced that like this was the way to like success. And I didn't know anything about raising money back then, so I was trying to bootstrap a tech platform for natural hair. Long story short, I learned that niche social networks don't work. So if you're building one, don't. And this is back in like 2013, right? So like capital wasn't really a conversation for Black and brown founders really until 2020. And so I signed my husband up for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We ended up winning $100,000.
Wow. Okay.
And then we put like 15,000 of that into that app. 2 years doing that app, I realized, I got my first check for like $200 for ad space on my website. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to be like Facebook. I'm gonna have to compete with them. And I'm like, there's no way I can compete with Facebook. And so I was like, closed up the business literally. But I had picked up skills in photography and web design and product development, just so many different things, copywriting, pitching. And I was able to apply those skills to my next business, which ended up being Chronix. And I had vowed that I would not do any product-based businesses around hair care. And I laughed because I ate my words because that had become my expertise. Yeah, a lot of times we want to do things that are not in our expertise, but that's literally a waste of resources. You know what I mean? You have all this expertise in journalism and reporting, and then you go to something completely different. It's like you lost.
Like curly hair. What do I know?
But anyway, so that was what I was doing 2 years ago.
Okay. Let's give you the same question, Mark.
I'll actually take it back to 11 years in that I started my company, Hyde Park Hospitality, 11 years ago, but I was actually coming off of my second entrepreneurial venture. At that point, I was in the process of selling 21 Burger King restaurants that I owned.
Wow.
It was a deal that we had very high hopes for, but 18 months after acquiring the business, it was sold to a Brazilian private equity company, and they changed the landscape of the business very quickly. And I made the conscious decision that I'm not going to be in this position again, and that I'd be beholden to one brand. And I wanted to get more into the contracted food space. I wanted to know what my receivable was going to be. As a lot of you know, restaurants come and go, and we went from having a successful launch on the Burger King side to getting being sold to private equity, and pulling all the middle management out, going dark on advertising, and we struggled for 3 years in a me and my partner then made the decision we're going to sell the business back. And at that point, I said, I'm not going to be locked in with one brand again. And that was sort of the birth of Hyde Park Hospitality, and that we would be working with multiple providers and get more into the contracted food service management space.
All right. So I want to talk, Kim, just a little bit about what your original business model was. We're going to ask you the same questions. What was your business model originally, and then your approach for getting your product out to the customer?
So in 2015, I had moved from Chicago to Atlanta because I thought I need to be at the hair capital. And the black hair capital is obviously Atlanta, right? And we were watching an episode of Shark Tank, and this lady was making these organic cookies where everything was pre-packaged, so you didn't have to go and buy all the organic ingredients, but you could still feel like it was organic and you made it yourself at home. And this is back when the natural hair industry was like booming, right? 2015, just to give you guys context, like She Moisture launched in 2008 in Walgreens for the first time. So by 2015, we got the Carol's Daughters, we got the Natural 85s, and YouTube is like huge. I was like, I wonder if anyone's doing this for hair, because a lot of us are, kitchen-ticians, mixing things in our kitchen. Oh yeah, I'm still doing that. Like, y'all not do that no more, okay? No. And so they were doing. I was like, I wonder if anyone's doing this for hair. And I was like, at the time, subscription boxes were big, and I was like, we should do this for hair. I launched and sold one box to my cousin. And I was like, see, I knew this was a bad idea. I was like, nobody wants to make their own hair products. And my husband convinced me. He was like, Kim, if Airbnb can relaunch 7 times, surely Cronus can relaunch twice. I was like, okay, fine. And so I just went back to the drawing board. I figured out how to pitch press. A tip for you guys if you're trying to learn how to pitch press, you can go to buzzsumo.com and look up your industry's topic and see the top 10, 20 articles in the last 6 months. And then go and pitch those journalists that wrote those articles. Wow. But make sure you read their work. So when you pitch them, you can kind of say, hey, I saw your article on this. I think you'd be a great fit to cover our launch of X, Y, and Z.
Wait, what's that website?
Give them the website again.
BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo.
It also helps if you know a weekend evening anchor or reporter. They can also help put you in the right direction as well.
Yes. And did that, and then we got some influencers on the launch as well, because reporters love eyeballs, and if you can ensure that they're gonna get eyeballs, then you'll get a better launch. And then we ended up selling like 100 boxes on our first day of the relaunch that September.
So 1 to then 100.
Yes.
All right, moving on
up. We do 100 orders, at least a couple hundred orders a day now. So I love that when you say that. It was just sweet. It was like, okay, we definitely moved up. But we did that for 2 years, the do-it-yourself box. The margins were 30%. And I talked to someone in my industry who was further than me. And she was like, well, the margins for a regular hair bottle product it's like 80%, 80 to 90%. And I was like, oh my gosh, even if I could scale this, I shouldn't, right? Because I'm never gonna be able to make it I'm getting $1 for every 3 that someone else is getting. So I'll never be able to market and compete. And I think we were doing maybe $140,000 in revenue annually at that point. And so that's when I met with one of my advisors. I was getting ready to close down the business because I was like, my best customers are starting to unsubscribe. People are still going to buy ready-made hair products, and I learned that I had a vitamin, which is nice to have, and not a painkiller. And if you think about it, right, you know your painkillers, your Tylenol, your Aleve, your ibuprofen. You do not know the name of your vitamins, right? Like, we might know one brand. What is it? One a day, maybe? You can think of it, but most people don't know. And so then my advisor was like, what's your best-selling box? I'm like, it's our flaxseed gel, but the actual flaxseed that you boil to eat, well, when you boil it, we get gooey gel, we extract the gel, but we can't really preserve it, no manufacturer will make it for us, and he was just kind of like, figure it out. I was like, this is the best advice I've ever gotten. And so I was just like, okay, well, we figured it out. I was 7 months pregnant in my kitchen. I made 50 different batches of flaxseed gel until I landed on one that I felt like we could scale. And every time I would go out in the street, y'all, I was on Michigan Avenue, and this lady flagged me down in the middle of the street on Michigan Avenue. She's like, what is in your hair? I have to know. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is it. And so then that's when we launched pre-orders to our audience, and we sold hundreds in a matter of hours. And I was like, oh, this is what we should do. And this is year 5 of entrepreneurship, right? Really fine. We got started in 2013. 2017 is when we kind of figured the flaxseed gel, and then we literally got rid of the next 6 months of boxes that we had lined up for the DIY box, and just entirely pivoted to the flaxseed gel. So January 2018 was the first year that we did only flaxseed gel and maybe some oils and moisturizers, but we made our first $1 million that year.
Woo!
That was one heck of a story. And I'm sure some of you have similar stories as well. I want to find out what was your original business model and how did you get your product to your consumers, your customers?
So again, original business model was, again, coming off, give me the climate here, coming off of a sale and slowly moving into food service management. My first contract was with Aramark, and it was on a business dining contract. So think of corporations that do feeding. So there's corporate cafeterias, and it just so happened that Aramark asked me to be a partner with them on AT&T. And once I started to see what these checks are like, I said, man, this is it's not that bad.
Checks like, right?
Pretty decent. I said, and oh, by the way, I had, some of you may have been to a former restaurant I had, Park 52. Yeah, shout out to Park 52. A lot of amazing times there, but a lot of people thought like that was my day job. That was actually my labor of love. That was my gift to the community. I actually took no salary for Park 52. We were actually ahead of the game in terms of the redevelopment of the community.
Yes.
But I had 21 other restaurants that would actually pay me. So this was my investment in the community. And I made the decision, the University in Chicago said, hey, we're about to do this redevelopment. Do you want to relocate? And I said, well, I'm just kind of starting this other business. I'm gonna pause on that. So they actually ended up buying me out the lease, and I started Hyde Park Hospitality. And again, we started with that one AT&T contract, and then that the next contract behind that was Chicago Public Schools, where we are partnered with Aramark, and that's been 11 years in running, and where we employ 50 Black and brown people as well. As I tell people, there's no better employer of our people than us.
Yeah.
As I have these conversations with major corporations, they say, well, how can we get out in your network? I said, look, we do this partnership, I will go hire my people. That's what I'm about. And we've been able to go from Angela Faison, who was arguably employee number 2, to now, 11 years later, we have 900 employees, and we'll be north of 900. We'll be north of 1,000 at the end of the year. So it really started out with a pivot from what I was doing before in the restaurant game into this contracted food space, and it's really taken off.
Incredible, incredible. I want to ask both of you about one of the easiest topics when it comes to running a business. Everybody get out your pen and paper. We want to talk about funding.
Oh yeah.
We want to talk about debt. How many of you have questions about funding and debt when it comes to running your business? Let's start with you. Where did the funding come from, and how much debt would you say you have been in running your business and starting up your company?
Ooh, y'all want to get real?
Let's get real.
Nobody's using my money in here, so no. In the beginning, I didn't really know about raising money for real. And so we honestly used our credit cards. Now, I don't recommend that for everybody here, but my husband was making $250,000 a year in tech. I was working on the business, and we ended up maxing out. When we got to our first $1 million, we had to go to $100,000 in credit card debt.
Whew, how much?
Yeah, I don't recommend it. Okay, but I want to know the real, right? Like this is what we ended up doing. Now we don't have 100,000, much less. But that was what we did to our first $1 million. And then after that, I ended up raising from investors. So I got my first $1 million investment from the former CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner and his partners. Thank you. And Arlen from Backstage Capital, they all came in at like 1.2 mil. And then later, I ended up equity crowdfunding. So I went out to After I got to 1 million, then we went on Shark Tank, we got to 5 million, and then that's when I raised the 1.2 million in investment. And I thought, okay, well, we got to 5 million, I should be able to go out and raise more money. It should be relatively easy. We 5x the business, you know, they just need to see year-over-year growth, and this is like 500%, this is excellent. And this is before 2020, and before a lot of the funds existed for Black and brown founders. And I went out and no one would leave my round. They were like, and for leading a round means like you have to have one big check and then all the other small checks will follow. And so the round was like, I don't know, a few $1 million. So I needed somebody to put in 1 or 2 million for the round. And they're like, oh, we want to see more, we want to see more. And I just remember thinking like, I have 100,000 customers. Like what more do I need to show you? I'm not in retail. You know what I mean? Like this is all online business. And I just remember being so frustrated. And then that was when I learned about equity crowdfunding. So that means typically before 2012, if you were not an independent investor, you could not own shares in an Uber or in a Google before they went public. Only the really wealthy people with a couple million in net worth could actually buy into that company when they're worth $6 million, $20 million, $100 million, right? These companies are worth billions now. But that means that everyone in this audience, or not everyone, I don't know how much money y'all got, okay? But y'all got less than a couple mil, you know what I mean? Then like you would have been able to invest in these companies. So the Jobs Act in 2012 allowed for everyday people to be able to invest $100, $200 into the next Uber or the next, and it doesn't, and I say Uber, but you don't have to be the next Uber, you can be the next Maya, you can be the next Shea Moisture. You can be a $1 billion company, you don't gotta be multiple billions, okay? But in the number that you could raise was 1 million, it had been raised to 5 million. And so now this is interesting. Because before I was like, you gotta go through an audit, and like a legit audit. I don't know. Yes. Everyone's afraid of audits. I'm like, I never done an audit. It's actually not bad. Like once you get into like bigger business, you do audits regularly. Because when you do finances and the millions and millions of dollars, they want to make sure someone's looked at your financials to make sure it's accurate. And so I was like, I have 100,000 customers, I can raise my own investment. And so I literally launched a campaign and raised about $4.5 million from about 7,000 customers.
I was one of those customers.
And so yeah, so I recommend, if you have an audience, especially if you're a product-based business, I absolutely recommend equity crowdfunding. It is a huge learning curve. I feel like it's like a mini IPO. And I know a lot more about dealing with the SEC than I feel like most business owners will ever get to know. But it's a resource outside of bank funding. Because banks don't lend to you unless you're in business for 3 years, unless you're profitable, you have a healthy EBITDA, like all these different things, which means that like you're 1 to 5, you're probably not going to get bank financing, unfortunately.
Good stuff.
Is there a website to go to for more information? Because y'all love a website.
I talk about crowdfunding on my Instagram, KimLewisCEO.com, but I also use the platform WeFunder, WEFUNDER. And what's cool is you can also crowdfund your loans too. You don't have to actually sell equity in the business. You can crowdfund loans on your terms. You can say, I want to raise $50,000, 3% interest or whatever. Now, if it's below what market is offering for interest, then like people may not do it. They can just leave their money in the bank or put it in a stock market or whatever. But some people, your friends and family, might do it because they know that they're going to get it back. But you can crowdfund for rewards. You don't actually have to pay it back. You just give people a gift. There are lots of different options, and I think people of color specifically, crowdfunding is a great option for us because you can build, collect from your network.
Very, very good advice. Let's ask you the same question. Let's talk about funding and debt that you might have accumulated across your journey.
So, again, had come off a couple of different businesses where we had raised through friends and family. This particular business I really wanted to keep closely held. And I was telling my wife, who's here today with my daughter, thank you, sweetheart, for being here, that I found my first $3,000 check after going through my files in my deposit into Hyde Park Hospitality. Now I don't even know what the IRR on that is. That's a crazy return. But I found, so again, invest in yourself, obviously first and foremost. By the way, shout out to my banker, Daryl Newell. Daryl, so prior to having the restaurants, I was actually in the wireless space. I was Verizon's and Ameritech's largest African-American distributor. and I did my first loan. Daryl did my first line of credit over here when he was at Harris Bank. He's moved on to PNC and doing big stuff, and that's in Secc 2, by the way. So shout out to D. Newell. But again, for me, that was first check in terms of investing in myself. But then we had to step it up. As Kim alluded to, even with my my resume and my background, banks often don't step up, and particularly at a larger scale. And I had my first opportunity to make an acquisition of an airport business in New Jersey at the Newark Airport in the United Airlines terminal. And we had a chance to buy 6 coffee locations in the United terminal. And I had shopped the deal to a couple of local banks. They were kind of lukewarm about it. So we ended up actually getting some high yield debt from a company out of New York. And even though they got us on the playing field in terms of getting the deal done, what you quickly want to do is realize that, that they call it high yield debt for a reason. And my goal after doing that deal was to get them to take them out, right? So they got me on the playing field. I started getting seeing those rates they were charging. I said, I got to get the hell out of here. And ended up refinancing my loan with Wintrust. Wintrust stepped up in a big way here locally, so shout out to Wintrust. And then from there, it was really a combination of self-funding, using cash flow for particular deals. Again, I'm 100% owned and controlled. At some point, I might entertain some equity, but right now it's really good, so I'd like to keep it that way. Not that having partners is a bad thing, because I've had businesses that had partners. So again, for me, it is 100% controlled purposely. And again, Wintrust, bank debt is typically cheaper than equity. So if you can get it, do it. That being said, you have to be mindful of meeting certain thresholds and covenants, right? So you got to be running the business in a big fashion. And as I refinanced that deal, I actually did an SBA deal. So shout out to the SBA. So that was actually a great deal. I was a little hesitant. I hadn't done an SBA deal before. Actually turned out to be a blessing, and that is a 10-year loan. We got a great interest rate, and there actually are very minimal covenants associated with it. So the SBA actually came through in a big way, and it was stopped by Wintrust.
I have a question, Mark. Can I have a question?
Sure.
Dialogue. You got talking here in the living room. So.
And it's really just because I have no knowledge of airport business. And I think maybe some folks in the audience don't either, right? You recommend you guys know like the numbers behind airport businesses? Okay, right.
Very well.
Can you and I'm not gonna ask them about your whole business, but that early deal with the coffee shops.
Yes.
So there was like 6. Like what is the coffee shop doing the annual revenue in an airport? And then what is it for like finance guys?
It really depends, is the short answer. Depends on the brand, depends on the location, depends on the terminal. Are they doing construction, what have you? Typically, rule of thumb is an airport location can do 3 times what something does on the street. But to get in the door, you have to be certified, you have to have an ACDBE designation, and the cost of building an airport is very expensive. So you're looking at about $1,200 a square foot, give or take. And you're dealing with a much smaller footprint, right? You don't have all the storage that you have in a freestanding restaurant or location. So you have storage constraints, you have barriers to entry, and you have capital that's needed. But if you're able to get past that threshold, it can get good. I'll give you an example. Again, Park 52, early stage restaurant, community-based restaurant. We had, conservative expectations of what that would do. In our heyday, $2.5 million. If we were there today, we'd probably do $3 or $4 million, which is a win. I'm part of an airport venture in Denver that's doing $12 million, right? So it's there. McDonald's in Denver doing $1 million a month, right? So it can get really crazy. And again, I'm not saying every venture is like that. We're lucky enough that we just won the first Chick-fil-A at O'Hare Airport. The first, there were others that tried to bring the brand there. We were able to work through all the politics and what have you. So we're actually going to be opening Terminal 5 on the Delta side, probably at the end of first quarter in 24. So we're excited about
Congratulations.
what's around the corner.
Very cool. So we talked about the startup stage, but the first 5 years in business is obviously really, really important. We talked about a relaunch and et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk, both of you, about the challenges that you had within those first 5 years, and I mean challenges. And how did you overcome that? We'll start with you.
Challenges in the first 5 years. So one thing I recommend to people, people who are starting their businesses who want to get in the product space, a lot of people want to make their own stuff. I actually recommend that you don't. I did it because we had a flat CGO and no manufacturer would make it. But having to build out a manufacturing facility is incredibly challenging, and more than just challenging, you have to be brilliant in a totally separate part of the business that doesn't necessarily make you money. You know what I mean? Like, marketing can make you more dollars. Operating a manufacturing facility, it just costs you more expenses. You know what I'm saying? And so, but I couldn't get my product made anywhere else because I had to manufacture. Now, that being said, we have a 30,000 manufacturing facility with kettles and pumping lines and things that we had to put together ourselves, right? I'm 32. Like, I have a degree in supply chain management, but I've never learned how to put machines together. Luckily, my husband is brilliant, and so he handles that part of the business. But I would recommend contract manufacturing. And yes, it's gonna be more expensive, and yes, you'll need to find funding for it, but that just means you need to charge more to your customer. If you're charging more to your customer, you gotta get better marketing, right? Because I think that's the skill you really need to have as a CEO, CMO, or whatever, if you're gonna sell products. But manufacturing was a huge challenge. We went from my kitchen to 1,000 square feet space in IC&C. So if you're a maker and you just have to make your stuff because you're in food or something like that, you can do the hatchery, you can do IC&C. It's the Industrial Council of near West Chicago. And basically what it is a co-working space for manufacturers. So if you start with 1,000 square feet, let's say the business blows up, you need a 3,000 square foot space. They can put a hole in the wall and give you the unit next door, and you don't have to go anywhere. And they have high voltage hookups, they have just all the things you would need. And in the beginning, we were like, maybe we need a storefront, maybe we don't, I don't know. But this is probably the best thing that we did. And then we were able to get, by the time we left, we had 5 units at IC&C of around 15,000 to 17,000 square feet between producing the products, packing, shipping, etc. But it was the most inefficient thing we've ever done, because we would literally make the products across the street, get a truck to bring them to the other building, take it up 3 floors, take it to the back of the building to pack it in a box, and then roll it back to the elevator, take it down, and then drop it off to me out. Woo! Yes. Talk about inefficiency. So that was a huge challenge. And then we moved to our new building. We're actually in one of the old Johnson & Johnson buildings on the south side by the ring. Thank you. And the challenge now, though, is that my costs are here, regardless of what the business is doing. So my rent is $30,000, period, per month. And if the taxes go up, if I could put my landlord on blast, I would, but I'm not, okay? But now, my staff is not getting tickets for parking, because they were getting their cars were getting booted on the street while they're at work. That really sucks. But we're also in one facility, so it's highly efficient. We can make in this area, pack in this area, and then roll it out the door. So we're also not losing as much money. So actually, it was a better business decision. But it was a huge challenge trying to make our own stuff in the very beginning.
Wow, that's the first time is very, very important.
Tell me the question one more time.
What are some of the challenges that you had in the first 5 years, and how did you overcome them?
The real ones. The real. The challenge of the first 5 years, countless ones, right? I think for us, we were trying to diversify our customer base. right? We had some success with landing business with Aramark, and we felt like that was a pipeline that I could eat from and provide jobs. But we wanted to not be limited to one customer, kind of business 101, strategy 101, throwing all your eggs in one basket, but still stay disciplined to who we are as a business, right? We have a box that we stay within because there are plenty of calls and opportunities I get on a daily, weekly basis that can really divert you and get you off your game. But we really want to stay disciplined in who we are as an organization. So even though the first 5 years were challenging, I would say year 11 is actually the most grueling for our organization. And I'll tell you why. We've gone from a small business to I would say a pretty credible medium-sized business. And the growing pains that we're experiencing are countless. It's really all about building your infrastructure, right? And in order for us to go from Aramark to customers like Meta, which is Facebook, and Chase Bank, and who's the other one? I'm drawing a blank. Airport Dimensions, and we just picked up Guinness, the new Guinness tap room that just opened in the West Loop. In order to get those type of caliber, where you're dealing with Fortune 100 companies, you have to have the infrastructure to be able to be in that room, and it can't just be you, right? You can't be a one-trick pony. So if you look at my team, if you go to our website, it's very purposeful about who we hire and making sure they look like us, and they make sure they look like America. We look for the best and the brightest talent that's out there. But in order to get that talent, they gotta be, believing in the vision. So having a vision, being a leader, finding talent, keeping talent. Some of my managers here today, they were out in the hallway talking about, where's the raise? But we laugh about it, but the reality is they deserve it, right? So you have to be giving people opportunities along the way. So we've been able to build these lines of business where people can now move within the organization, right? They're not looking elsewhere. They're looking inside Hyde Park first and say, okay, I started out as a manager on the Chicago Public Schools account. Now I'm moving over to the Guinness account. Then I move over to Facebook. Then I move here. Then I move to the airport. So we're creating these developmental opportunities internally. And again, in order to do that, you have to have infrastructure. I mean, I've hired 5 directors this year. Director of Finance, Director of HR, Director of Airport Operations. I can go down the list. And these are all 6-figure salaries, right? So, I mean, to get to that level, you gotta be having a vision, making sure people believe in the vision. And really, it's about culture at the end of the day. We're really trying to build a culture, and we're really trying to go from this mom and pop operation to a real, reputable, reliable business. And it's very difficult to get to.
Well, you talk money and hiring directors at a 6-figure salary, so I want to talk money with you guys. And what it was like to hit that first $1 million. When was that for both of you? And then I want to talk about how y'all celebrated. Start with you, Ken.
So I mentioned in 2018, the year we pivoted to the flat suit job and realized what we were used to get this hairstyle. We were like, oh, this is what we should do. So we started focusing on that. The third month of the year, we had done maybe like 30,000, but with no Facebook ad spend. So it was just like all organic. And I was like, oh, and that's when I got my husband to quit his job, which I probably shouldn't have done in hindsight, but to go work for the business. And then by September, we were probably doing like 6 figures, most 6 figures, like in a month. I think by November, we had done like 200-something thousand in a month. And then literally like December 31st or something like that, we had done the number to hit like $1 million. In that calendar year. In 2018.
2018, okay.
And I celebrated by cheering and then fixing my website to make sure I had the proper like discount code in the header of the website. That was honestly, and we don't celebrate enough. I think truly like really successful people they have a ton of vision. And so, I don't think we celebrated when we hit 10 million. You know what I mean? It was like, all right, cool. Like it was kind of 9.8 net. You know what I mean? It wasn't even, I'm like, oh, that's not good enough. You know? So it's
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I couldn't focus. But no, we don't celebrate enough. So.
Well, I definitely think that is, that's worth celebrating. Let's give her a round of applause. 2018. And that's really incredible. What about you? What year was it that you guys hit that $1 million?
I think we started the business in 2013. I think we hit the $1 million mark a couple years after that. So, I mean, respectfully, it was relatively early. I'm thankful for that. I think for us, it was when we hit the 8-figure mark, and that was a few years ago. The $1 million, the revenue is super important, but I want people to understand the margin is everything, right? Profit margin is everything. I could be doing $1 million business, but have a 90% profit margin. That's a damn good business, right? Or I could be doing 50 million with a 1% profit margin, right? So again, the top line revenue is important, but the margin is equally important. So really understanding, and that goes back to the discipline, again, the type of business we take on. We actually walk away from business. We get offered business. There were contracts that Aramark tried to put in front of us that were very intensive, and they were going to be a real resource drain on our people, but the margin was 2-3%, right? So high revenue, low margin, a lot of drain on your staff. So you as business owners have to make that determination. Is this, one, is it in my wheelhouse of what I do strategically? But two, is it throwing off the capital and the profit that I want as an organization? Because all business is not good business and all growth is not good growth. So you gotta go through that balancing act and really make that determination, peel the onion back to say, is this in my wheelhouse? Is it giving me the profit I need? That being said, there's some business that you're doing today that you're looking at the long-term potential tomorrow. I'll give you an example with Chase. We're opening these Chase Sapphire Airport lounges across the country. The first one opened in Boston. We're opening 2 in New York this year into the first quarter, and then we're opening 6 more. The margin is good, but it's the relationship with Chase, right? Who arguably is one of the biggest financial institutions out in the world. And what we can piggyback off of that relationship into other business, right? So I'm in having meetings with the managing director. I'm going to Chase headquarters. By the way, it's really nice, by the way. Having meetings there, et cetera. So it's taking the long ball game, taking the long-term vision of, okay, we're in the door with them. We have this one contract. And even since doing that, I've gotten 2 other calls about 2 other opportunities since doing the first one right. So it's about getting in the door, delivering and over-delivering, having the infrastructure, because we're rolling deep to these meetings, and then building from there and playing the long ball game. So.
Can I want to ask that you're so right about the margin, the percentage, and I give you space on whether or not you're playing. There's 2 different games you can be playing, right? You can be playing like the profit game where you're B2B and it's like, I'm going to hold this business for 10, 20 years, 30 years, and then maybe sell it at the end, or hand down to my kids. Or you can be playing the venture game where you're raising money from investors and you're valued on growth, which means you don't necessarily have to be profitable for the first 2 years. You can actually burn a lot of money. Now that means that in this market, that may not be the case, right? Everybody I know who's done that, we were in a profit market for the last few years as well. You know, some of the biggest checks that you've seen, venture capital has diminished. I don't know. I think these Q1 of this year, or with last year, was like $10 billion invested in, you know, seed stage, Series A, B, C, D, etc. This year, I think it was like only $1 billion. Like it literally dropped by like 90%. It was crazy. So then all these tech companies who've been raised tens of millions, or hundreds of millions of dollars, like, oh, we can be profitable. Now that's the conversation. But I imagine when the market rebounds, it's gonna go back to being, well, you could lose a few million, you could lose 20%, 30%, 40% of revenue. But just so you know, there are 2 different conversations, right? There's a venture track, and then there's like a profit track. Small business that's gonna hold for 10, 20 years, but eventually will sell for lots and lots of money.
I want to talk with you guys now about financing, growth, and expansion. How do you grow as a business? Mark, we can start with you on that one. How do you finance your growth as a company?
Again, for us, it was the banking institution. We had the initial term loan. And then, again, along the way, as opposed to getting other term loans, we were able to get a 7-figure line of credit. And, the trick to that line of credit is a lot of us try to eat up that line of credit. That line of credit is there for a reason. You dip in it, when you get your cash back, you pay it down, right? We gotta be disciplined. Because again, you don't want that, even though it's not high yield in terms of the line of credit, it's still usually at a higher interest rate. So we don't wanna be living off of that. You wanna dip in that and be very disciplined about it. So for us, the line of credit is really kind of the fuel to get through the day-to-day. Because thankfully, I haven't had to make another equity investment since that day one. Again, going back to that $3,000 check with one employee, we're now north of 900. I haven't had to reinvest back in the business. So, and I also think, again, being disciplined over the course of the operation, there's temptation to want to, pull in all the profit, et cetera, but realize that, this is your baby, this is your business. So you're gonna have to constantly refuel, refeed it, et cetera. And whether you're investing back in hard capital or access to lines of credit, et cetera, for us, that's how we were able to continue to grow. For the Chick-fil-A deal, we actually brought in an outside partner. In the airport space, joint ventures are very common. So happened that the partner, Chick-fil-A, had the license. And so it's actually an African-American woman from out of state. So we were able to do our first all ACDBE deal, which hadn't been done in the Chicago airport. So we didn't work with any large companies. It's all funded by 2 DBE companies, which is unheard of. So we're really trying to change the paradigm of the airport space. There's another deal that we just bid on. We used a local restaurateur here in the Bronzeville area, and hopefully we'll be successful. But we're pitching a bar in one of the terminals, and we partnered with one of the big guys at Primes, and I said, look, we'll do this deal, but we want to lead the deal. Like, we want to lead it. We want you to use the restaurant brand that we're using or that we're recommending. And they acquiesced and they did it. So we're one of the finalists. So fingers crossed on that. It's actually a brand right here in Bronzeville that we'll see if we're lucky enough. But again, we're trying to change the paradigm in that space.
You want to jump in on that?
How do you finance your growth?
How do you finance your growth as a company?
So I told you I did the equity crowdfunding, and then recently I took on some institutional investors. So Cleveland Avenue actually is one of them. Shout out to Cleveland. And that is just, it's typically used for like team and inventory for large orders and different things like that. So I don't know, I've taken lots of different kinds of capital. I've also got money from a foundation before, where the St. Stanley Foundation, they essentially wanted to add jobs to the community. So they gave us a pretty hefty loan that could turn into a partial grant if we add certain jobs to the North Lawndale area. And so I just want you guys to know there are lots of different ways to fund your business. It's not just like, if a bank won't lend me money, I don't have any options. You have crowdfunding, you have foundations you can apply for grants and or loans from. You have angel investors that can write you $1 million check. You have what'd you say? ACB. What is it? I'm sorry?
Allied for Community Business.
Can you speak about that? Did you?
Allied for Community Business.
Oh, you're not familiar. Okay, gotcha. I thought you said you did it. Oh, my bad. Look, I don't know the.
Daryl's quoting him. That's the money man.
That's the money man. Didn't know.
Right.
But yeah, there's lots of different ways for funding your business. I actually would say that's the one thing I'm actually good at. The rest of the stuff I do in business, I don't know. But I can find some money. But one of my investors, she's on my board, she's like, yeah, Kim, you're real good at shaking this tree and see where it falls.
But it's interesting. I just want to make this point for the folks that are here today. Again, thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate it. And this rainy Saturday, have such great representation. So thank you. But I think it's an interesting dichotomy in that mine is 100% minority under control, closely held. Kim's is, she's running it and probably has the majority equity, I'm assuming, but she also has institutional investors.
Yes.
Right, so there's two very different strategies here. One is not better than the other, but two different paths.
My
And I think
business might be like yours.
But I think to your point, I'm a little bit more old school, right? In that, you know, my dad, who I'm second generation, we used to do early manufacturing to McDonald's. He wanted to control the entire business. Newer school is, you know, you don't have to necessarily have 51. You're building a pie. You're bringing in, you're, you know, using other lines of equity sources, crowdfunding, etc. I don't think there's one way that's better than the other. I'm just making a distinction. There's two and multiple platforms out there to find capital.
Very good advice. All right, now we want to open things up for you. I know a lot of you must have questions for our two multi-million-dollar CEOs here. So if you want to raise your hand, we've got a microphone up here that we're going to pass along to you. We're going to have somebody bring this mic down so you can say your name, who you are with. We've got a lot of people raising their hands all at once.
Yeah, one of the Jaguars like
Microphone
that
to
is
you.
orange sweater.
We're going to start with the pastor.
The pastor.
Over here in the orange sweater, who's got a question, and our Jordan's gonna bring the microphone for you. Say your name, who you're with, and then our question for Kim and Mark.
Good morning, Pastor Doyle, Positive Vision. For both of you, who is the teacher, elementary or high school, who is 100% right about you, and why?
Interesting question.
The teacher at my high school?
Teacher, elementary
Elementary or high school?
or high school, is 100% right about you. Back in the day, they saw you for exactly who you are, and why were they right?
Yes, I'm gonna let you go first. Look, I had plenty of mentors and teachers and administrators that were supportive and believed in me. For me, I mean, even though I had a great nucleus and network, for me, it really started at home. Both my mom, my mother, Margot Brooks, and my father, Frank Brooks, again, I'm second generation entrepreneur. For me, it really started at home. And watching both of them, my mom even had her own entrepreneurial venture, so watching them as employers, and that was sort of ingrained in me at a young age. So I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to be like them, and I also wanted to be an employer. It wasn't about me, it's about providing opportunities for people that look like me. That was my journey.
What's that? Thank you. Give us a teacher that sticks out.
Mrs. Gagan, in sixth grade, she became my teacher at Witherspoon Elementary School on the south side, so 130 Cottage Grove. And she just really saw something in me. She would, let me stay after school for different projects or invite me to different things that she was hosting on the weekend. And then she launched a foundation and asked me to come back and, what is it called when you're the speaker for the whole thing? The MC. There we go, MC. But she's just been such a driving force, and she really helped me get into Morgan Park High School. She wanted me to go to a different program.
Morgan Park!
Okay, maybe not. But I think having that person that believes in, I think what's important to get from that is that what keeps you from burnout in a business is having one person who really believes in you and that will be in the mud with you if it all goes wrong. And when you don't have that, it's much easier to quit. And so I recommend having a co-founder or someone, a partner, spouse, whoever, do the business with you or support you while you are doing the business.
Fantastic. They're giving me the wrap here. I want to get one more question in from somebody that has a burning question. You were waving your hand so feverishly. I know you have an important question for our guests here this morning.
I don't need a mic.
She don't need a mic. Okay, say your name. Go ahead and stand up. Project.
My name is Vanzai Cohen, CEO of Cohen Construction Services. My question is around the decision-making processes. of when you're pivoting, because I'm running a construction company and I'm in betwixt of what to do next.
In betwixt?
Yeah,
Wow.
betwixt. And so, how did you decide when to pivot, Kim? At some point you had to wrap up what you're doing and said, this is not working, I need to do this next. Like, was there a specific process you followed, or you just looked at the numbers? And then also, when did you decide it's time to sell? And like, let me just move it, let's wrap it up and move to something else.
Sounds like she's at a crossroad.
For me, my best customers, people who were subscribed for over a year, started to unsubscribe altogether. Like a lot of them. And I was like, and so I called them up. Most of us are afraid to call our customers because you don't want to hear what they really got to say about the service you're providing, right? It's kind of intimidating. I called them up and they were like, well, yeah, I have 6 boxes stacked up in my house. And I was like, 6? And they were like, yeah, like I'm still buying, you know, these different products from the store, ready-made, because it was inconvenient. And then that's when I was like, oh, it's fun for them to do. So I just realized it was a vitamin, not a painkiller. So I think if you are in the midst of a pivot and your best customers are all of a sudden unhappy with the service, or you're not snowballing, because I thought subscription boxes should snowball, right? It should get bigger on its own because their subscription, they're rolling in every month. But that wasn't necessarily happening. I was flat all year. For the whole year, each month. And so and then it was 30% margins. And so to me, all the signs said, this is not working. And you have to do something different, otherwise it's going to die eventually. So do you want a slow death or a quick one?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, the data, the numbers, we gotta know the numbers of each of our respective businesses, right? So unless you're a .com business where your business model is hemorrhaging cash, most of us can't.
Hey.
No, I would consider you a .com.
I'm kidding.
You actually have a real product, respectfully, right? But I'm just saying, there's some business models that are set up where you know you're not going to see a profit for a number of years. Most day-to-day businesses is simple X's and O's, right? You're making money or not, right? So if your cash flow is not telling you that you're making money, that's one side right there. I think the other side is, you know, really get an idea of where your customers going. And the Burger King instance I told you about, where they were sold 18 months after we acquired, they told us that they're going in a different direction. And in that direction, we were losing customers left and right. So the writing was on the wall. And typically you want to sell at a point of strength, right, where you're throwing off a profit, etc. We always don't have that luxury. So in any instance, you want to jump on it as soon as you can, because you don't want to be burning cash on one side and be at a disadvantage trying to negotiate a business that's losing money. So you want to try and be on top of it as much. So I would say understanding where your space that you're in, also the direction of where your clients are going, are they gone, and really having a pulse on what your internal numbers are. Your financials are everything, right? Yeah. Timely financials are super important, even in a small business. You may think you're making X. You're like, oh, I know I'm making money, but the reality is you gotta have the financials, because guess what? The financials are going to be asked by your investors, the bank, financial institutions, etc.
Ooh, I echo that? You cannot get finances without financials. And most of us do not have good accounting. We are like, oh, I don't need to account. I need to make the money, I don't need to account for it. I said that because I said that before. And I have paid probably 6 figures to clean up accounting for years that I was not getting done.
Make an investment in a good accountant and a good lawyer.
Yes.
You get a strong attorney to draft your operating agreement, etc. And you need a good accountant to make sure you have timely financials. You may not need them today, but trust me, you will need them tomorrow, and you will be relying on that information constantly.
Very good advice. Let's give a round of applause for our speakers, Kim and Mark. Thank you so much for being here. This concludes our moderator segment for this morning. I'm sure they're going to be around. If you guys have any personal questions that you want to ask them, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you so much, everybody. My name is broadcasting from NBC 5. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and we have a 15-minute break. So 15 minutes, we'll come back, and our speakers will be here to answer any questions. Thank you.